So lifestyle medicine, unfortunately, isn't something that I received any training in. I'm undergrad in medical school or residency, and your family doctor unfortunately didn't receive any training in it. Your surgeon, um, your heart doctor, your cancer doctor, whether you have a cardiologist, oncologist, a surgeon. Unfortunately, our doctors in my generation didn't receive any training. I had to do extra training. I'm double board certified through the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, where we specifically looked at all the research out there. Research that shows that if you implement certain changes in your life, you can live healthier for longer, for stronger. And I'm going to touch on all four of those things with you tonight. So as we as I let's start by touching base on the four big killers of our time. These are the things that you and me will most likely die of. I work in a big busy hospital. We admit people with these illnesses every day. And when I meet these people, they would often say, "Oh, I wish I met you 10, 20 years sooner." Because I will teach them certain things they can do to help fight their illness. And then they say, "Oh my goodness, if I met you and I made these changes 20 years ago, I would not have ended up here in hospital with a heart attack, or ended up in hospital with osteoporosis, with a hip fracture. I could have improved my bone density, or I would not have ended up in on dialysis." There are so many things that we can prevent, and that's really what's driving my passion, why I opened this wellness clinic, why I started my YouTube channel, why I have my podcast, why I have resources on my website. And you can have a look on our website, www.wellnessmdhealth.com. There's a lot of resources, and feel free to email me if you have questions after tonight, info@wellnessmdhealth.com. Okay. So these four things that is most likely the things that can take away your quality of life at the end of your life would be cancer, heart disease, diabetes, or dementia. These are the four biggest killers, and they're also all four of these things we can significantly impact with the strategies that I'll be discussing with you tonight. So let's jump right in. We're going to start with heart disease. So heart disease, I'm going to look at a little bit on statistics here. Heart disease is this is our American statistics, but it's really alarming. And here in Canada, it's very similar, but in the United States, someone has a heart attack every 40 seconds. And you know what? The most common sign for many people of heart disease would be sudden death. And this is very alarming. So this is something that you might not anticipate, something that you might not be aware of, but that you could have done significant things to help prevent it. And I know that is why many of you are here. Many of you are here asking, what are the things that you can do to prevent heart disease? Maybe you've been diagnosed with heart disease, or you've been diagnosed with cancer, or you've been diagnosed with diabetes, or you've been diagnosed with dementia. Quite a lot of my patients that I work with is dementia such a big spectrum. We're not diagnosed with dementia and then we're completely forgetful. We go through a long period of time where you might know that you have some features, some signs that you are forgetful, and then your doctor might be telling you, and you want to implement lifestyle changes. So that's the one group of people that I see. The other group of people that I often see would be people who are caring for aging parents. And if you have aging parents, you might be in your 50s and 60s, and you might see parents in their 90s and think that you have great genes, you're going to live for a long time, but you definitely want to have good health until late in your life. And it is possible. Always when I admit patients who are in their hundreds, I love it. When I admit patients to hospital who are 104 years old, and they'll tell me they've never been to a hospital. Then I always ask them, what is their secret? And we'll touch on each one of these topics. And for everyone, it is so the same what their secret is. We've done a lot of research on the blue zones, and a lot of you might have read up on the blue zones. Unfortunately, as we are delving deeper into research on the blue zones, we do find that there has been, say, for example, in Japan, there has been a lot of fraud where people not necessarily declare to their relatives there to be able to keep getting a pension. So a lot of that data we have turns out to be quite distorted. However, we do have good research and good data to help us pinpoint what are the things we can do to live stronger for longer. So if you have an aging parent and you see that they have a decreased quality of life, and you decide you don't want to spend the last 10 years of your life in hospital, it's totally possible. So heart disease, that's the biggest killer on our planet. Know your family history. If you have a male relative who's had early onset disease, we call it early onset disease in men below 55 and women below 45, know that you're at an increased risk of heart disease. Don't smoke. That is a big thing that you can do to decrease your risk of heart disease. Next one is to make sure that you really go beyond your average lipid profile. These tests are not covered by OHIP. You might need to pay out of pocket for it, but it's such a good investment understanding your numbers. So when we look at the different breakdown of cholesterol, we always look at your HDL. This is your healthy, your high density lipoprotein. This protects your heart. You want that higher. You can get it higher by increasing more healthy fats in your diet, avocado, walnuts, olive oil. These are the things that use up all the binds to all the bad cholesterol in your body and helps your body to excrete it. Next number that you want to know is your LDL, your bad cholesterol, your low density lipoprotein. You want this number as low as possible. You want to know your triglycerides, and then the next one you want to test for is your ApoB protein, lipoprotein. So your family doctor won't recommend this, but I really encourage you to make sure that you know your numbers. Next number you want to know is your HbA1c. So this number helps us to know, it's a blood test that we do that look at how many of your hemoglobin cells has been damaged by high blood sugars. If you test your blood sugar might be normal if you go for your annual blood test. But there might be times after a muffin, after a donut, after a Starbucks latte, where your blood sugar goes up and then it comes down again, but it goes up. Then every time it goes up, it does damage to your red blood cells. Your HbA1c shows us how much damage has been done to your red blood cells over the past 3 months. So that is a way better marker that you want to look at than just your blood glucose. And we don't only look at it for diabetes, we also look at it to look at your risk for heart disease. So that's specifically your glucose metabolism that we test with your HbA1c. Something else that I love to do when people see me in my wellness clinic is I sometimes recommend that they get a Dexcom monitor. And you can buy that for $100 at Costco, a glucose monitor. And on my Instagram, I have a video where I used a Dexcom monitor myself. It's a monitor that you put on your arm for 10 days. And then on your cell phone, you can track your blood glucose and you can see what effect whatever you eat has on your blood sugar. And it's, for me, I have a wellness clinic. I help people lose weight. I'm an athlete. I thought I had like really this perfect diet. And then while I was using my glucose monitor, I saw that after I go to Starbucks, we have a Starbucks in the hospital, and sometimes I would like to have Starbucks with oat milk. And then I noticed on my glucose monitor that my glucose will go up after I had a Starbucks. And it never dawned on me, the oat milk that I use at home is sugar-free, healthy, organic oat milk. The oat milk that they use at Starbucks, turns out, is not sugar-free. So my blood sugar actually went up when I had Starbucks. So my patients find it very helpful. Even if you're not a diabetic, if your only focus is longevity, what are the things that you can do to improve your longevity? You want to prevent cardiovascular disease, and you look at these factors that I'm talking about. If you know, really getting to know your numbers, your risk, then you can try that. Wear a monitor for 10 days and eat what you eat, and you can see how your body responds to certain meals. If you notice there's something that you love eating and your sugar, whatever it is, and your sugar goes up afterwards and it takes long to come down, then it would be such a life-changing event for you if you know that having a bagel every morning causes your blood sugar to go up too high, and you stop having bagels for breakfast now and you maybe replace it with 2 eggs, 2 tomatoes, and 2 mushrooms. It's going to have such a tremendous impact on your life in the long run. So that's something you might want to try. We always want to think long term. Whatever health you want to have in your 70s, you really have to think about that in your 30s, in your 40s. Things that you do in your 30s and your 40s affect your illness. Dementia that you diagnose in your 80s really developed in your 50s because of high blood pressure, high blood sugar, not being active enough. So that is quite a big thing for heart disease is exercise. We say now in that sitting is the new smoking. I'm grateful that especially here in Canada, and especially the people that I see in my wellness clinic, typically don't smoke anymore. But people don't even realize what a sedentary lifestyle they have. So quite often when I work with people, I would tell them to get a Fitbit, and then we track. We have an app at the clinic where their health coach would track. And just to create some self-awareness of how much you're moving, because quite often people will think, oh, I do so much exercise, I go to the gym all the time. But if they objectively track, then they can see they're not reaching their goal. And it's really personalized, your goal, of whether it's 6,000 steps or 10,000 steps a day. But quite often we tend to be way more sedentary than we realize. So that is a big thing. It's your exercise. And next thing, and we'll talk about that when we talk about exercise, is your VO2 max. But that's one of the numbers that you need to know if you want to prevent heart disease. Your blood pressure, that is quite important. And then your sleep. Your sleep is big. So I'm going to touch on that a bit. So as I talk through everything tonight, I want you to really understand that prevention is key. When I started the clinic, this wellness clinic here at the hospital, for patients who see me in the hospital that get admitted with whatever it might be, cancer, diabetes, and they started reading up and they realized, oh my goodness, making these lifestyle changes can really reverse their illness, and they just need some support. So in the clinic, I would see people along with a health coach always. I don't see people just on my own always. With a registered nurse, a health coach, a dietitian, someone with functional medicine training. And we were tremendously successful with every patient we see to help them reverse their illness, get off their diabetes medication, come off their insulin, come off their metformin, come off their Januvia, lose weight. We're tremendously successful with what we do. And so word of mouth spread, and people started coming to me with just a focus on longevity. And I said, oh my goodness, you're not on any medication. I'm not going to help you to reverse any illness. I can't take any money from you. And people then kept coming. People who'd be in their 60s, 70s, maybe have aging parents, maybe have goals for themselves, or just retire and think that you're maybe 70 years now, you're going to live till you're 100 or 105. What are you going to do this last 30 years of your life? Are you going to be strong? Are you going to be able to play pickleball? Will you be able to play with your grandchildren? Can you go to Florida on the beach, sit down, and then get up on your own? What will your quality of life be in this last third of your life? And it's quite tremendous. So I then started doing a lot of research specifically on longevity, and there's so much research out there. I learned a lot when I did my certification through the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, but then now developing specifically protocols specifically for patients, I really delved deep into the research. And the things that you can easily do to increase your quality of life can be divided into four key topics that we'll touch on tonight. The first one is nutrition. That is absolutely key. Nutrition is a big topic and it has to be personalized. Next one is exercise, sleep, and then your emotional health. So let's start with nutrition first. When I see someone in the clinic, I always do a body composition analysis. So we have this pretty cool in-body machine, and I have videos on Instagram, on the Wellness MD Instagram, where we show where you do this body composition where it shows you how much muscle mass you have and how much fat you have. And this is critical. So I started doing it specifically for people who are perimenopausal, want to lose weight. If your body composition is that you have more muscle mass than fat mass, it's very unlikely that you'll be gaining weight when you go through menopause. But unfortunately, there is a lot of women, especially, who look very skinny on the outside. If you look at that person or calculate their body mass index, their BMI, they seem to be normal or skinny or in good shape. But then when we do a body composition analysis, it shows that they have very, very little muscle mass and a lot of fat mass. And this is not good. Apart from you then having a slower metabolism, always cold, from my perspective as a doctor who work in the hospital, my biggest problem with that is that if I admit a patient to the hospital who's had a hip fracture, and it does increase your risk of hip fractures if you've been too skinny your whole life. But if I admit someone with a hip fracture and they have very, very, very strong muscles, if you're that person who can get off the ground without touching your hands, without having to push yourself up, if you are playing on the beach with your grandchildren in Florida and you can get up without help, it typically means that your muscles are stronger. But then for people who have less muscle mass, if they come in with a hip fracture, the next day, people with strong muscles will, the next day after the operation, get up with the physio. They'll be able to walk. They'll be discharged very quickly after the operation. They'll go home. People without adequate thigh muscle mass, unfortunately, can't get up the next day after the operation. Then they have to work with physiotherapy. And we have a great rehab unit at the hospital, but where they have to slowly work with physiotherapy, first do in-bed exercises and then slowly out-of-bed exercises, slowly start to walk again, slowly get stronger and stronger. This is it is a very difficult process to go through. Your risk of dying within that first year of a hip fracture is 30%, 30%. So this is quite profound. Something that you can significantly do to reduce your risk of dying would be to prevent osteoporosis, to increase your muscle mass. There is no one type exercise good for all. And jumping to exercise. I'm just thinking about patients who often tell me at the clinic that, they can't go to the gym. I've never lifted weights. However, when I admit patients to the hospital and they're 90 years old after a hip fracture, they have to go to our rehab department after. They have to work out in the gym. They have to start doing weights. So if you come to me or you're watching this and you think, oh my goodness, I've never done weights. I'm not going to start with weights in my 60s or in my 70s or in my 80s. You're not too old. If you see me in hospital in 10 years from now, we're going to let you start doing weights, start doing muscle strengthening exercises. So you're never too old to build muscles. Okay. But to jump back about nutrition. Nutrition is really key. So on the one hand, we have a big weight loss clinic. We help a lot of women lose weight, men as well. We help a lot of people lose weight. We help with medication, without medication. We look at all the different aspects. But on the flip side, we have a lot of undernourished people. So these are people that try to be skinny rather than strong, because 10, 20 years ago, the fashion was more to be skinny like Kate Moss, Gwyneth Paltrow, rather than to be strong. We didn't have strong role models really as much as a decade ago. So quite a lot of these people who come in are really undernourished. If people undernourish themselves deliberately to be in good shape, what often happens is at your yearly checkup, your blood work will look great because your body has this incredible ability to stay in good homeostasis. So you will look good. On the outside, when your doctor does your blood work, it will look normal. But when you don't have enough magnesium in your diet, your body takes magnesium from your muscles. When you don't have enough calcium in your diet, your body takes calcium from your bones. So you can really make your bones osteoporotic 10, 20 years before you detect that on a bone density scan. You can break down your muscles by not eating enough, watching your weight, um, to control it over a too long period of time. So this is a big problem we have. We have the overnourishment component, and then we have the undernourishment component. And another thing that I really was so surprised to see. So I did my initial training in South Africa. In South Africa, my mom did her life's work was really to be able to get food grants to help the poorest of poor people obtain grants for their children, to have access to food, gardening projects to help people be self-sufficient. And they looked at all the research, how better nutrients, the big studies that she's done showed that children after the control group, the kids that did get the grants, that did get the extra food, would be average age and height of 2 centimeters taller than the kids who didn't get the food grants. It was so successful that they then rolled it out. This was in the 80s, so that all children in South Africa had access to that food grant, which is incredible. And part of that grant is where they said that you or your caregiver can get that grant if you attend school. So South Africa still has the highest rate of girls attending school, finishing grade 12 in the whole of Africa, which is quite astonishing. Everything for that food program. But that's what I grew up with, seeing kwashiorkor, seeing marasmus, people not getting enough nutrition. So, and I know firsthand the impact nutrition makes. But so I was so surprised when I came to Canada, and we seem to have abundant food. But same thing, people in lower socioeconomic groups who cannot afford fresh fruits, who cannot afford veggies, who cannot afford meat, tend to eat more Kraft dinner, which has unfortunately no nutrition in it. And these people tend to be malnourished. So even on the outside, if you look normal, your body on the inside can be very, very malnourished. And this is something I'm quite passionate about. But in South Africa, food would be subsidized, like milk, eggs, veggies, and fruit would be tax free to help people eat healthier. And that's really something where Canada can learn from. We can really do so much better helping people in lower socioeconomic groups eat more fruit, subsidize fruit, veggies. Next thing is that even if you do eat a very good, healthy diet with lots of fruit and veggies, unfortunately, our soil is very, very depleted of many nutrients just with farming practices. So quite a lot of people that I admit to hospital that do eat a very healthy diet, when I test them, I will see they're low in magnesium, they're low in zinc, they're low in, oh my goodness, I work in a very affluent area where people generally have enough food to eat, and they're quite often still deficient. Another reason why some people have nutritional deficiencies would be if they're not absorbing as well from their gut, and you can easily test these things. You can ask your doctor to test your vitamin D, your vitamin B, and it shows you how you're, even if you're on a D supplement, it shows how you're absorbing these nutrients. And even though these tests are not covered by our government, your health is more important to you than just having the test our government cover. You can pay out of pocket for these tests, then you know your numbers, then you can change your lifestyle. Something else I see, unfortunately, as people get a bit older, they often go on a tea and toast diet because it's easier than cooking meat, cooking veggies. Okay, nutrition is key. Nutrition is absolutely fundamental. Then the next thing we work on when we see people in the clinic is we look at their muscle mass. So under malnourishment is a problem. Overnourishment is a problem. It really, too much sugar feeds cancer cells. Cancer grow quicker with too much sugar. It drives diabetes. Diabetes drives all forms of end organ failure. It drives heart disease. It drives up insulin resistance. So too much. And the thing as well with sugar, our bodies is created incredibly so that if you do eat sugar, your body stores it into fat to be prepared for a period of time that you're not going to have food. But food has become so easy that it's very rarely that people go without food, that we go for days without food. We generally, most of us have access to food every day, so we generally don't need our fat stores as much. So we don't really need to get sugar, fructose to turn that into fat. So we're just eating too much, too often. We never go through fasting periods where our body can use up fat. And then we never, and this abundance of sugar, unfortunately, in our diet, we call it the standard American diet, where there's sugar in everything, breads, pastas. Unfortunately, it really drives obesity. Okay, so that's the first step. If you come to me, to my clinic, just with a focus on longevity, or if you want to implement this at your home, really have a maybe go to your local gym, ask if you can do a body composition analysis, look at your muscle mass. If you have too much fat in your body, that's the number one thing you can do to improve your longevity, to improve your insulin sensitivity, would be to lose fat. When we help people to lose fat, one of the things we do is to increase their protein intake. So key for you is to do resistance training, to work out in the gym, to work on your muscle building. But you need adequate protein, depending where you are in your life. But for people who are perimenopausal, for people who want to lose weight, I generally recommend a gram of protein for every pound. That's 2 grams of protein for every kilogram of your weight. That is quite a lot of protein. It's definitely more protein than most women take in. Most women were socialized in a way that women would typically rather have granola for breakfast rather than 2 or 3 eggs, and would rather opt for a salad and a quiche at lunchtime rather than a steak. So on the one hand, we got socialized in such a way. On the other hand, it is hard. I'm a mom, I know. I don't have time to make protein the whole time about, when you have a full-time job and you have kids and you have activities. So it is often very hard to eat adequate protein. So what I recommend to people here at our clinic, to make it easy. So first of all, track your protein. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you are eating enough protein for your body, then you're good. Then you leave it there. If you notice that, oh my goodness, you are not getting enough protein in, be cognizant of your protein intake. I was vegan for a year while I went through medical school, when we dissected, oh my goodness, we did, I think it was 12 weeks straight, where we, from the morning till night, dissect a human cadaver in our anatomy lab. It was horrible. And I was like, oh, I cannot eat red meat. So I became a vegan that year. And I was actually at a higher weight then. And on hindsight, I now understand it was really because I didn't have enough protein. And sometimes when I work with vegans, you can have enough protein as a vegan. You must just be aware. It's not something that came naturally to me. I was doing endurance running, endurance races, and I didn't have adequate protein. It's such a sensitive age when you in my 20s. So that's quite important. Okay. Then the next thing, a tip that I'd like to give you. If you're trying to lose weight, if you're perimenopausal, if you're just can't eat as much steak every day. So first start by tracking your protein. You can use an app on your cell phone, whatever. And if you notice that you don't eat enough protein, next thing you can do is to start adding a protein shake to your routine. I do that, and I did triathlon for Canada at the International Triathlon World Championships. I competed. And during that time, I really tracked my nutrition. And I found that the easiest way for me to have enough protein during that time of intense training was by adding protein shakes. There's different protein shakes on the market. Make sure you use one without sugar, without carbs. You don't want to get fat through your protein shake. You just want to add it on to have enough protein. So usually a keto one would be good because it doesn't have added sugars. We actually developed one here at this clinic because we give it to all our weight loss patients, all our longevity patients, all our patients coming, reversing chronic diseases. So we developed our own formula that we know is very clean from additives, clean from preservatives, Canadian made. It's a vegan protein powder. You can try different ones until you find one that's good for you off Amazon. I recommend just double checking all the ingredients, making sure that it's a very clean product. Okay, so that might be very helpful for you. That's really key. If you just take away one thing today from this talk, is make sure that your nutrition is good, that you don't have sugar in your diet, because sugar really feeds cancer cells. It causes diabetes. Next one is to have adequate protein in your diet. Next one is to have adequate veggies in your diet. If you have a hard time getting enough veggies in your diet, what I like to do is I take baby spinach, organic baby spinach leaves, and I mix it in my smoothie together with my protein powder. And then it's like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I already have my protein and my veggie intake for like the first half of the day in. So that's very good. That helps me. Something else we often recommend. Oh, and there are so many things. So maybe just start tracking by what you're eating. Really track your intake, track your caffeine, track your alcohol. There are so many things. So really, just for 3 days, track exactly what you're eating, track your steps, just to know exactly what your nutrition status is like. And then, and if you do your blood work and you notice, your levels are low, even though you thought you had a good diet, we give IV vitamin therapy to many people when they can't. Our goal is eventually to absorb everything from our diet, but that might be something you might want to look into. Next one is exercise. Exercise is a big topic. There is no one size fits all. When people ask me what exercise to do, I always first tell them, what exercise do you like? Do that. Because I know if someone likes something, they're more likely to do it. But if you want to look at the research, what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to get in adequate steps every day. So to go for walks. You don't even have to see those walks as exercise. You can just see it as movement of wellness, walking between the trees, clearing your mind. But really try to get in steps. And for every person, it would look different, but try to track how many steps are you taking and increase that. The next thing is to build muscle. It's ideal if you can try to do at least twice a week some muscle strengthening exercises. You don't have to start by going to the gym and lifting weights. You can really start by planking, by doing push-ups, by doing sit-ups, by doing squats. You can look at YouTube videos for exercises, and that's really a good place to start, is just against your own body weight to do those exercises, and just squats, pretending that you go and sit on a chair, and just before you touch the chair, stand up again, and go and sit. Just before you touch the chair, you stand up again. These are the things that's going to make a difference, to your thigh muscles, to your strength. It can make such, your hand grip, doing pull-ups. There are so many things that you can do completely for free in your local park to work on your own muscle strength. That's key. And as I said, even if you've never been to the gym, you'd much rather go and get a gym membership now or do weights in your basement than first doing it with me in hospital. That's key. Then the next thing about exercise is high intensity exercise. So high intensity exercise is when you run so fast that you get out of breath. That's when you play pickleball. These are the things that you do that really, really increases your cardiovascular capacity. This is going to prevent heart disease. This will help delay dementia. That's why it's important to know your VO2 max number that I spoke about earlier. This is something that you can increase on your own with cardiovascular exercise. So the majority of your cardiovascular exercise, walking, running, you want to actually do in zone 2. Zone 2 is where you're not breaking out in a sweat. You can still talk while you're doing it. You can listen to an audiobook. You can listen to my audiobook. You can listen to my podcast. These things is quite enjoyable. But then for spurts of 5 to 8 minutes, you want to run faster, walk faster, get out of breath. That really increases your cardiac capacity. Then the next one, the other thing about exercise, which is important to know, that when you exercise, your brain secretes something. This is called brain-derived neurotropic factor. I'll say that again, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So this is something that when you secrete that will prevent dementia, cognitive decline. And it doesn't only prevent dementia, it also improves cognition, focus, alertness. They've done studies where they would let kids run before school and do focus concentration, and consistently kids, students, older adults, people who exercise have better memory, better recall, better focus, better attention span. It's quite significant that doing exercise can have such a big impact on our memory, and then it can also delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease. Oh, this is something that I really want to touch on, is what is genetics and what can we address with lifestyle factors. So there are a lot of things that we are genetically at risk for, but then there is also something called epigenetics. These are the things that will activate our genes. So we have a lot of genetic risk for disease, but it stays dormant. And then if we do something like smoking, like drinking alcohol, like being overweight, that triggers our risk for that specific illness. So even though you were genetically predisposed for that illness, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have it. The fact that mom had it, dad had it, grandma had it, grandpa had it, doesn't mean that you're going to get that illness. There are many things that you can do to prevent you from getting that, or that you can drive it and get it earlier. It's so devastating to parents when their kids get admitted in hospital 40s and 50s, and the parents, have to look after this child with significant vascular disease, heart disease, renal failure, and they would tell me that this is wrong. They thought it would be the other way around, that their kids would be looking after them. But then, unfortunately, we now live in a much more unhealthy society where people often in their 40s and 50s tend not to have as a healthy lifestyle as their parents used to have, which is unfortunate because on the one hand, medical science has improved to such a degree that we can live till we're 100. But then we also sometimes make poor lifestyle choices where we sit and watch TV all day and we don't move enough. We eat processed foods. We eat way too much food, which unfortunately then increases our risk for all these diseases, our four big killers. So, next thing, the other thing with exercise, before I stop with exercise, the amazing thing about exercise is that even a little bit of exercise can go a long way. So even if you're listening to this and you're a couch potato, you don't do any exercise. I had someone in the clinic today who tells me, no, she doesn't walk when it's cold out. She doesn't walk when it's dark out. Like, come on, when are you going to walk then? So even if you used to be very sedentary and not walk, it is just starting to walk 90 minutes a week can decrease your all-cause mortality with 14%. So this is profound. I should say this again. There's no drug that we have on the market, cancer medication, heart disease drug, cholesterol medication, diabetes medication, that can say that it can decrease your risk of dying, all-cause mortality. So decrease your risk of dying with diabetes or with heart disease or with cancer or from dementia if you exercise 90 minutes every week, 90 minutes. Now that's quite profound. And even if it doesn't come naturally, you can set your alarm every day to go for a half an hour walk, gently increase your exercise. So that's quite big. Then the next thing, so we talked about nutrition, we talked about exercise. The next thing that you can do to live longer, for stronger, is to improve your sleep. So this is key. This is something that I didn't really know when I did my medical training, especially in med school. As medical students, you would study all night. Then I worked at a pathologist lab. I grew up with parents who honestly believed that it's laziness to sleep too much, who really valued just work ethic, who really slept very little. So we now know that sleep is critical. When I have people who come for weight loss and they don't know what to do, they have a perfect diet, they work out for an hour every day, they can't lose weight, I look at their sleep for everyone, especially for women. I have quite a lot of women, when they hit perimenopause, I'm so surprised at these women. They work out, they go to the gym every day, they eat very little amount of food. But then being driven, being in a very stressful work situation, managing kids, managing aging parents, quite often their cortisol levels would be so high that it's like no wonder it's impossible for them to lose weight. So the first thing we look at relaxation, deep relaxation strategies, but I work on sleep. Sleep is quite critical. You need more sleep than we used to think. People who sleep, I've the stats here. There's a study that showed that people sleeping less than 7 hours a night can increase your risk by dying prematurely by 12%. This is quite significant. So we want to try to sleep 7.5 to 8.5 hours of night. It will improve your physical performance, cognitive performance. The research is incredible. It helps with metabolic dysfunction, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity. But I've seen that firsthand in my clinic time and time and again. When people are overweight, when they've tried everything, they can't lose weight, we look at their sleep. And as we optimize their sleep, then the weight just falls off. Okay, so there are things that you can do to sleep better. I do cognitive behavioral therapy for sleep. I did extra training in this because I tell everyone to sleep more, for athletes to perform better, to sleep. I have a lot of patients who are doctors, and we tend to do night shifts. I have nursing patients that do night shifts, so I tell everyone to sleep more. Simple things you can start doing today to sleep better, to have a better quality of life, because sleep, because it's not just the hours, it is the quality of your sleep. And I have a blog on my website on sleep. You can have a look there, www.wellnessmdhealth.com. There's a whole blog on sleep where you can look. And I have a podcast on sleep. I have a YouTube video on sleep. But to things that you can start doing right away to improve your sleep, try to be in bed from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That is, research shows that no matter what time zone you are, that's the time when you'll get most optimal quality sleep. Try to avoid screen time for the 2 hours before. When you wake up in the night, do not look at your cell phone. Don't look at your screen. Don't have your cell phone in your room. Don't have lights in your room. So really avoid screens 2 hours before bed. Read a book, journal, talk to your family. And then when you wake up in the middle of the night, have a quiet corner where you can go and sit on a couch with a dim lit with a book. Okay, that's the one thing. Next thing is make sure that you only have caffeine in the morning. Caffeine has a very long half-life. So often people will tell me, oh, they can drink coffee and fall asleep, no problem. But the reality is that you won't go into your deep restful states. And you will be woken 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. You can look at your nutrition. Sometimes people have hypoglycemic episodes 3 or 4 in the morning. That might wake you up. Alcohol, unfortunately, impairs the quality of your sleep. Even if through your 20s and your 30s, you used to go to bed very well after alcohol, you might fall asleep easier, but you won't get good quality of sleep and you'll wake during the night. That's the thing about sleep. So make sure you do things to improve your sleep quality. Make sure you go to bed every night the same time, get up every morning the same time. Go outside first thing in the morning. Expose yourself to natural light after dinner. Go for a walk. The more you're outside, it's better for your biological clock. That's key. As you get older, your body secretes less of all your hormones. Melatonin is the natural sleep hormone that you secrete less. So there's fancy testing I offer in our clinic to test for melatonin. If you don't have access for that, that is something that you might try to help you sleep. Then the last thing that I would like all of you to think about is your mental health, your psychological well-being. So I do cognitive behavioral therapy where I help people work through childhood traumas. There are so many things that would be driven, obesity, heart disease, so many things that would be driven by unresolved trauma. So this is something that you can really, really, really do to improve your quality of life, to restore relationships, would be to cultivate some self-awareness, to start journaling every day, to think, how was my day? What was good? What was bad? What is just to become aware of your emotions, your mood. if you know you have trauma, I really recommend you see a therapist about that. And even if you don't have coverage for that, there's this app you can use, BetterHelp, where you can be matched with an online psychotherapist throughout North America. It's a good investment to invest in your mental health, to develop some self-awareness, to know what is happening in your mind, what emotions you have. There's like all this research that shows that this has a very, very, very big key factor of your quality of life is your emotional health. So really have it addressed, invest in that, make sure you see someone. There's a very good book I often recommend to people. It's by Kristen Neff, called Self-Compassion. So Kristen with a K, Neff, Neff. I know it's available at the library. You can also get it on Amazon, on Audible. It talks about self-compassion, because quite often, a lot of people will tell me they've had maybe very critical parents, this and that. But then quite often, you maybe had a critical mom the first 20 years of your life, but then for the next 60 years, you are that critical voice inside your mind, criticizing yourself, being hard on yourself. So that might be your biggest game changer, to develop some self-awareness, some self-compassion, and to regulate your mood, regulate your emotion, the stress tolerance, just everything mindfulness related. It's very profound. I've seen the incredible difference this makes in people's lives with all of these diseases we touched on. I recommend you really invest in your health. And that I'll wrap up my talk with that. I hope you learned something today. Mostly, I hope you learned that your emotional health is just as vital as the other things, how important nutrition is, how important adequate protein intake with your nutrition is, how important adequate exercises, and just knowing you can do these things to significantly improve your quality of life, we call it your health span, not how long you live, but how long you live disease-free. So I really hope you learned something. If you have questions that tonight when you go to bed you think, oh, you should have asked this question, feel free to email us at info@wellnessmdhealth.com. I would love to connect you with or tell you about resources in your community. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode today by medical doctor Daniela Steyn. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter at www.wellnessmdhealth.com to stay up to date on educational resources that will take your quality of life to the next level. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider. Never disregard medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. Remember, you are created to thrive.